Okay, welcome back to the course. So in the last video, we learned how to create class-based components, and in this video, we are going to learn about the structure of a React app. So we're going to learn how to use things like the views directory, the components directory, all those things, which are not strictly a part of the React library or the React ecosystem. It's just a nice way to organize our app so it's easy to navigate. So React apps are best organized by feature. Each feature will be in its own folder and have its own components. And if you're wondering what I mean by feature, you could think of this as a page in your app. So for an e-commerce app, that could be the products page, or the profile page, or the add product page. All of these things can be considered features. So moving on, our React applications will be separated into views and components for now. Later, we will add folders for assets and the store. So let's start with the src directory. This is the directory that's going to contain all of your React components, and you can see here that under the source directory we have a directory for components, a directory for views, then we have index.js and app.js. Index.js is just the file that renders your entire application. App.js is the top level component of your entire app. But you may be a little confused about the difference between components and views because both contain component files. To understand this, we're going to start out with the views directory. So you can think of the views directory as a directory containing all of the pages that your app is going to have. So like I said, for an e-commerce app, you could have profile, products, and also dynamic pages for individual products. So I just used an abstract example here where we have under the views directory, there is a route name. That's going to be the name of your page. And then under there, we have a couple of components that are used in that page. And then we have another one called route to name. That'll just be another page, as I said. But now let's move on to a better example. So here's an example of the views directory. As I said, for an e-commerce app, we could have products and profile. But for this one, I used a blog example. So we'll have a directory for posts. Or maybe this isn't a blog. It could be like a Twitter clone, a Facebook clone, anything like that. But anyway, we have a post directory, and under there we have a post feed component, which obviously needs to go in the post page. So the post feed component is going to display all of the posts from your friends or whatever. It's just going to list all of them, have the like button and all that. And we also need a feature on the post page to search for posts. So that's what I mean when I say that the route directory is going to have all of the components that are used by that page, because inside of the post page we need both the feed and we also need a search feature, and they will just be on different portions of the page. And then we could also have a profile page, and the components that might be used by a profile page are the profile header that contains your name, your profile picture, and whatever else. And you could also have a bio component that contains text describing your life or whatever. So that's basically how our views directory is going to be organized. So let's actually go ahead and do something similar to that. So let's clear everything from the code window, and then inside of the src directory, I'm going to actually get rid of this views component, and then I'm going to create a new one inside of the src directory, call it views again, and then inside of here, we are going to have a page called products. Then we're going to have the same file inside of there, which was products.jsx. But then let's also have another page, and let's call that one profile. And then in there, I'm just going to keep it simple and just have one profile component. And then inside of there, we're going to create a file called profile.jsx. So the big advantage to organizing your app this way is that you can see just from looking at the views directory, you can see how many pages your app has. So just looking at this, you can see that we have a products page and a profile page, and that's probably all we have. And as we add more pages, we'll just add more directories to the views directory. Of course, as it is, there's no way to actually handle the routing between these pages, but that's something we'll learn about once we go into React Router. So for now, we're just seeing how we are going to end up organizing our apps when we do things that way. So now let's look at the components directory. The components directory is more of a grouping of the components that could be used by multiple pages in your app. For example, you'll need the like button on the post feed component so that you can like other people's posts. But you might also need it on the profile component because most people, including me, tend to like their own content on social media. So on your profile page, you're going to have a list of all of your posts, and you'll need the like button on those too. So that's why we tend to put those kinds of components into a separate directory from the views. We tend to put it in a components directory, and that way we can access it from anywhere throughout the app. So you can see here in this generic component structure, we have the category name, index.js, which exports all of the components from that category. Then we have subcategories, and component folders inside of those. So let's look at a more real world example where inside of the components directory, we have a layout folder. And this is important because we're probably going to be using the same layout on all of our pages. That kind of thing is important for branding and everything like that. So again, we have an index.js folder that will export all of the components that have to do with the layout. And then we have a subcategory for navigation. Inside of there, we have a navbar component, and then we have another subcategory for the header, which contains the site title and the search bar. So all of these things are used in several views or several pages, and that's why we need it separated from those so that we can access it from anywhere. I mean, technically, we could put these inside of a view and access it from anywhere, but it's bad practice. It's not very clear whether these components are used throughout the app or just in that particular view, and it just makes your app harder to navigate as you're developing it in general. So let's go ahead and recreate this just like we did with the views directory. So let's go up here, close the views directory, and then create a new folder called components. Inside of there, we're going to have a layout directory, and inside of there, we're going to have a navigation directory. And inside of navigation, again, there's going to be a navbar component that contains a navbar.jsx file. And then outside of the navigation subcategory, inside of the layout category, we're going to have another folder called header. And inside of there, there is going to be a site title component that contains a site title.jsx file. And then also a part of the header is going to be the search function. So that's going to be, what did we call it? We called it search bar, and that just created that just with an S. Let's redo that. The component is called search bar, and it has a file called searchbar.jsx. So now we have a reasonably organized directory structure for our React apps. We have the components directory and the views directory. In the views directory, we can see exactly how many pages our app has, and in the components directory, we store all the components that we might want to use in our app. So that is the basic structure of a React app, and that is the pattern we will be following throughout this course and in most of the projects that we're going to be creating, especially when we get to React Router, where the views directory becomes extremely important. So next up, we're going to be learning more about JSX. We're going to learn how to add event listeners to React components, and then after that, we're going to go into some conditional rendering. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, we'll be going into it soon. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.